So, good morning. Back at the bench today, making sure everything's on. Back at the bench today, and I'm tying a pattern that I don't think it has a name, but it's a really pretty pattern. I'm definitely tying a few extra of these up to put my own tackle box. But we're getting ready. Let's switch everything over. We're getting ready for springtime sales. They're about a month away, a month and a half away. And so I've just been tying an awful lot of bucktails, mainly sizes primarily for walleye. And that's what I've been making my runs at doing. But had a customer give me a call, wanted a custom order real quick, and this is a really neat pattern. So in the vise is the 1/2 Barumba. Hold on, we'll see here. Try to get this as good as possible. Goodness, completely not prepared this morning. But in the vise is the 1/2 Barumba, basic walleye head. You know, the Do It mold. Do It has a really nice walleye head mold. That would another great head to use for this. Ball head as well, 1/2 ounce, 3/8, 5/8, any of those sizes would be great. Start by locking on my size A. This is the Pack Bay rod wrapping thread. And it's a 3-color pattern. It's not striped. But it does use some crystal hair, which is really nice. Now, right now, I have an olive tail, and I'm using the darker strip up the center of the back of the tail. I wanted to use a like a natural bucktail, but this is probably the darkest I have. Even looking through my scrap bag. But I wanted something a little bit darker, so I'm going to use the dark patch on this olive bucktail. So I pick a pinch that is roughly, you know, is going to be a third, and a third. You can cheat a little bit. You know, you can do a 50% pinch for this darker color, and then 25-25 for your next two colors. And I think I find myself adjusting as I'm tying. You know, I might have one that the pinch is a little bit, you know, a little bit darker. Bigger pinch for this first color, so it's a little bit darker. But just like in nature, everything's, you know, nothing's identical, perfectly identical. So I don't get too bent out of shape if one jig might have a little bit more darker bucktail in it than the other. We're mostly concerned about proportion, the shape of the jig. how, you know, the presentation that the fish sees. That was 4 or 5 wraps towards the bend of the hook, couple crossing over to lock that into place. The center color is this root beer. Real nice color. I don't use this a whole lot. Sometimes with a sandpike pattern. And I'm guessing that this color combination might be similar to a sandpike. The darker back with a, you know, basically brown with a darker back and a lighter belly. The sandpike, of course, is a striped pattern. This could also be possibly a goby type imitation, just based on the colors. Not exactly sure when this video will come out. We are a little bit ahead in the video schedule. So like I said, we got about a month and a half to opening day of walleye. This will probably be scheduled to air pretty close to the opening. So pretty close to, you know, the beginning of May. Now this cream color as our third color, I did take a pretty thick pinch. The area of the tail that I took this from has a pretty big curve in it, you know, cowlick, I guess. So I took off enough so I can pull out not just the thinner fibers and the fuzz from the butt end, but also kind of get rid of some of those pieces that are just really bent. You know, so I took a pinch that was wide enough where I know I'm going to waste a little bit. Ideally, you know, if when you're tying as a hobbyist, you know, you're going to use just the hairs at the top towards the tip that are ideal, and you can be more picky as a production tire. You know, you got to use as much of the tail as you can. I do adjust my tying, and I think I've probably talked about this a little bit before, and I'll get into, you know, this is a good topic for another video. But how I would go about adjusting my, as I'm tying, adjusting my wraps or adjusting my pinch or adjusting, you know, how I make adjustments to work with and compensate for material that's less than ideal. As an example, I got some pieces right here. Really nice tails. These were big tails, but they look like they've been chewed on. Basically, the issue with those tails is when they were being dyed, they were kind of left in the pot a little bit too long. The heat was a little bit too high, so basically they were boiled. They were pulled out of the soup mix before they were completely useless, but they're not sellable. You know, this is a third of it, and it's split down the middle, and here's another piece, probably the base of it. So if I was dyeing those to sell, it would be a waste. You know, I couldn't sell those at all. And they're not even pretty enough to give away as like a free sample, really. But I'm able to use them because I'm not selling these. The hair is good hair, but I have to be a little bit picky on the parts that I'm snipping from. I have to be a little bit picky and actually kind of throw some material away or waste it as I'm picking through it. So, you know, little things, you do have to work with. Sometimes material that's not the best. But still keep up the same quality with your jigs. So what I'm putting on now is I got 4 strands on each side, right down the middle, and this is an orange crystal hair number 5, angel hair, crystal flash, is all very similar material. This is just an old product, and I think these were sample bags because they came on one of those clips that looked like a 3-ring binder ring, and I probably had 30 different samples. It's just an old had an old bag of these. I'm just trying to use it up in my inventory, in my boxes and boxes of materials, which I think you might see in a video that's coming up. But let's finish this off. Try to, there's a little bit of a gap. Don't tell anybody I filled that in. And with my loop of size A thread, finish this off and take a nice look at it. Don't plan on leaving the cameras on too long. I did want to turn them on quickly just so we can see this pattern, because it is, I'm tempted to stripe it. It'd be a real pretty sandpike. Nice. Got a new pair of forceps that aren't as big. Let's turn off my face. How'd we do? That is a really neat transition from that darker color with that tan color right down the lateral line, and then the lighter belly, but it's not a white. That cream color looks really nice, and that orange just complements it. I suppose, I guess we're going to tie one more before I turn the cameras off. Maybe what I should do is use an orange thread instead of red. Red is what the customer asked for, though I will send him a picture of each, because when I'm looking at this, I really think the orange will complement the orange crystal hair that he asked for. So the orange thread I'm using is also a size A rod wrapping thread, though this is an good rod. So again, we start with that dark patch off the olive tail. And if you have a chartreuse, tail that also has a nice dark patch, that might be a good substitute for this olive, because if you take your black light, even though it looks a dark brown or almost black, there still are remnants or areas of that hair where the UV light will show the chartreuse color. So I think it's a kind of, it's a neat thing to add to your jig that I do think the walleye see. I don't want all my jigs to be, you know, fluorescent colors, UV, whatever. But having a few in the box, it's I think good to have. Especially if you look at the jig and it doesn't look, you know, if it looks like the brown patch. This is a little bit light, but this is the area that I'm talking about. Right up the chartreuse tail. Shining the UV light. Let's see if it does it underneath all these lights. That glow a little bit. Does it make a difference if I do this side? I'd have to turn the lights off. It does. I do have I have a couple pictures on Instagram. I did a few walleye flies, and they're the dark hair from the back side of the chartreuse tail. And with the lights off, with the UV light shining on it, you know, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So a few wraps towards the bend of the hook, a few wraps back towards the head. We'll go back to our root beer color. More like a root beer foam, right? But it's a tan, very light tan, light brown. Another thing I'll probably do a video on, but it was a problem I had just the other day. I was painting some of these brown heads, and I had to run to the local hardware store, place I've gone, you know, for the last 20 years, and I bought some lacquer thinner. The brand is Sunnyside. It's a common brand, well-known brand, a good brand. I've used it years and years and years. Started painting, and I was using, there's a specific brush that I use that works better than any other brush I've ever tried. All of these heads are epoxy paint. So back in the day, that was probably the strongest paint we had available to us at the time. I continue to paint the majority of my jigs with epoxy. One, you know, that's how our jigs are. That's how my jigs are. Kind of traditional, right? But also, I have in my inventory enough epoxy probably to last my oldest boy his lifetime. So getting back to the lacquer thinner, I have a brush that I've used. It's probably 2 years old. It's a natural hair brush. It's cheap though. It's a hobby store brush. Duro Art. number 1053. It's made in China. It's a quarter sized. Let's see. Put this right side up. It's 1/4 size, and it's a natural hair, natural fiber brush, camel hair. I'm guessing. I'm pretty sure. And it's because of the length of the hair. It's hard to explain. You can buy a natural hair paintbrush and paint on the epoxy, but if the bristles are slightly short, it kind of scrapes the paint off as you're stroking it on. And if they're too long, it's not firm enough to lay down that nice candy coat, that, you know, this hard shell that we want to create. So I'm still able to find these paintbrushes, thank goodness. Used to buy them at a local hobby store. They did RC cars, and back in the 70s, little lead toy soldiers was one of the first places that sold them around here. So I'd tag along with my dad just so I can get the toy soldier stuff, right? The Dungeons and Dragons and the Knights and all that stuff. But they last quite some time. So I had a brush. It was a couple years old. I sit down, I prepare the paint. I have to make a quick run to the hardware store while the paint's curing for an hour just to get more lacquer thinner. I grab the can off the shelf and I come back, I start painting. And when I went to clean my brush, the thinner didn't seem to be working all that great. It seemed to clean it off the outside of the brush. So what you could see when you're looking at the paintbrush. But I noticed that as you're swishing it around, I have a little shot glass of lacquer thinner that I use while I'm painting. Swishing it around didn't seem to really make the lacquer thinner dirty at all. Didn't seem like it was cleaning anything. So I cleaned the brush as best I could, and I came back about 30 minutes later, and it was solid. The bristles were just hard, compact. What it seemed to do was clean the outside of the bristles, but the paint that's trapped inside between the hairs, it seemed that it just kind of made it wet and then it dried all together. It was awful. Chalked it up to maybe the brush just being old. I got a new brush out of my inventory. I got at least a dozen or so, just waiting to be used. Painted some blackheads the following day and had the same result with the lacquer thinner. So I did notice that on the can there's a box around the word lacquer thinner, and that happened to be green, and I know in the past it's always been a black box. So I'm scanning the can, I'm looking all over to see if it's like some weird, what the heck am I doing? Some weird new recipe. Did they update it? What the heck is wrong with it? I can't find anything online talking about it, but I do go on the Sunnyside website and I find 2 different listings for lacquer thinner, green label, black label. There's nothing in the description to separate them. Start reading the descriptions a little bit, trying to see if there's any fine print anywhere. And I noticed that the descriptions are exactly the same on each page of the site, with the exception of one of them will say, what did it say, VO compliant, or it said, I think it said VO compliant. I don't think it said California compliant, but that's basically what it is, right? So I wasn't 100% sure if that was the difference. So I, just to double check, I looked at the code. Oh, am I talking at the screen and my face isn't on? I'm a genius. I like that orange collar better. What do you think? Switch back. So I start looking at the barcode, comparing the numbers, find that the last three numbers are different for each one. Find out what that VO compliance means, California compliant, right? So it's kind of weird here in central New York. Now I have to be worried about which lacquer thinner I buy. But that was, I learned something. It cost me $15 for an extra can of lacquer thinner. And I have a can that, what am I going to do with it? Put it in the garage and I'm going to clean my tools with it because it's junk. But that's what I'm going to do with that. But I'll have to make a video again on painting. A few years ago I did one showing how I paint with the epoxy paint. I'm going to have to do that again. Well, I'm not going to show them because I dropped my forceps on the floor. And though this is almost live and I don't cut out the mistakes, I'm not going to waste your time watching me pick something up off the floor. But I'll take one last look. You let me know. I'm thinking the orange collar not only complements the brown head and the color of the hair itself, but also matches that orange crystal hair. So let me know what you like. Put that down in the comments below. But I think that's going to do it for us today. This was just a real quick, wanted to show you that pattern because I think it's a real pretty pattern and something I haven't seen before. But I think that's going to do it for us today. As always, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Check out the website, jworthhandtied.com. I'm going to tie up some extra one of these. Give me a week or so. I'll put some of these on the website as well. And I think that's going to do it. So until next time, guys, keep tying tight lines.